Don't see anything yet.
No. Okay, I'll try again one more time to sink it in. And then COVID-19 mental health support group. Preparing live streaming.
Okay.
So let's just begin, and it will give me a notification when it's on. And if it doesn't go on, then we still get the recording, okay?
Okay. All right, great. So I posted your bio, but do you want to summarize a little more about your approach and kind of what you do?
Sure. At a young age, I started to encounter symptoms of anxiety and depression, and my tendencies at that time were to escape my pain, my suffering. I had both physical symptoms of severe lower back pain, but also mental, emotional issues of depression, anxiety, and a lot of anger. So to make a long story short, at some point I had to deal with it, and whatever I was doing wasn't helping at the time. And luckily, my subconscious released memories of why I was suffering, because that was the question: why I was suffering so much. I'm a young man, I'm fit, my life should be better, but I'm suffering. And I don't see an end to it, and I don't know what tomorrow will bring, and how long I can continue like this. And luckily, once I understood the why, it was just a matter of finding the right help, and I was guided to see an amazing therapist who really helped me come back to myself and reclaim who I was. And after I went through the process together with him and devoted also my personal time to understanding the mind and the body, so I threw myself into a very powerful meditative practice where the emphasis is to do durations of 10 days of silence and start to use the body as a tool to understand also the mind and how the mind works and how the mind and the body connect. So there at an experiential level, I understood this mind-body connection, how thoughts and emotions and the narrative that the mind creates can really affect your sensations and your pain and your suffering, and can create pain and can create disease. And once I went through my own healing process, what was very clear for me is that my role, my purpose is to help others in the same, that are going through the same journey in a way. And that's the journey of suffering and pain and our traumas. And I decided to become a therapist. And from day one, once I went into private practice, obviously the patients that were attracted to me were patients of trauma. So, and that could be working with women that have been traumatized sexually or abuse in the house, to people that have been traumatized by medical procedures and surgeries, motor vehicle accidents, and then it got into soldiers. And so over the last 20 years, I worked with all kinds of segments of the populations, from kids to end of life. And I've seen, where the manifestation of traumas in every state, when it starts when you're a kid, how it evolves to your 20s and your 30s and your 40s and your 50s, and also the end, the consequences of it at the end, when disease and death has a hold of you. So I've seen the whole gamut of it, and I've worked with all populations. And to me, yeah, trauma is at the root of a lot of our anxiety and a lot of our fears.
Could you speak to it? It feels a little like trauma is kind of a hot button word right now, and it gets thrown around. And some people have talked about COVID-19, the quarantine, all these changes that have happened overnight as a trauma. And I'm not sure everyone, quite kind of grasps that.
Yeah,
Could
a
you speak
pandemic.
to, how we can conceptualize this now as traumatic?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot of research that has been done. Actually, since 9/11 occurred, there's been a lot of research that has been done by psychiatrists on what they call secondary trauma. Secondary trauma. Nothing traumatic is really happening to you personally. As a collective, you experience a collective trauma like bombing the buildings in New York or going through a pandemic. Um, so people can be triggered in a way a trauma will trigger you personally, as if it occurs to you personally, and the triggers occur again in the nervous system and the mind, and it can put you at a state of hypervigilance, meaning the threat of a pandemic. It's a tangible threat. It's a possible threat. Something can happen to me at any moment, at any day. So your nervous system goes on a hypervigilant state, and once that starts, your body will exhibit symptoms of that state in a way. So collectively, and especially through the age of information where we're exposed to so much input, so all this input is coming in from all directions that your mind and your body have to process and analyze and discern what is a threat, what is not, what's real, what is not, and that could be overwhelming. And then there's the external input, which my own thoughts, beliefs, and feelings around this, and then exposure that I've had to the past of a similar threat, my history. So you have this internal and external inputs that can be overwhelming to the majority of us today. And your body again, together with your feelings, will make it seem very real. And I will say your body's symptoms are in a way a part of the information system of letting you know, hey, listen, I'm working too hard for us right now. I need some help from you or from others. We need some help here. We need some assistance. We need some help. We need a way to regulate ourselves. Does that answer the question?
It does, yeah. And so what many people have expressed is that even though they maybe haven't been through something like this before, most of us, stress is not a foreign concept, right? And so we might have developed some ways of responding to that, whether those are ideal ways to respond or not, right? It could be distraction, it could be shopping, it could be immersing ourselves in work. These are ways that we naturally kind of cope day to day. And for many of us now, we can't utilize those skills. We're home based, there are limitations, we can't physically access supports. So given kind of the limitations of a home setting, I think people are having to find new ways. So hopefully you have some advice for that.
I mean, it's good and bad at the same time. And I say it's good and bad at the same time because we are forced to create a new way of what I call adaptation, right? When we encounter pain or suffering in the past or traumatic events, we are creatures of adaptation. We are the best adapters on the planet. So we can adapt into any condition. You know, I've worked with people that have been in concentration camps. And after working with them and talking with them, it's amazing how we can adapt to the most extreme conditions.
Yeah.
But the problem is those ways of adapting which help us in the beginning, maybe when we are kids or younger, or just when we don't have the tools or the information, we adapt in order to survive, in order to manage what we're going through. But some of those adaptive behaviors eventually don't serve us and actually cause us some harm. So when we are put in when we are forced to change, meaning this is in a way it's been forced upon us, and we must adapt in a different way, in a new way. And that's sometimes is the struggle, the pull and the push. I know I need to find new ways of dealing with this, but my habitual ways are still holding me back. And that could be, drinking alcohol. Maybe I did that on the weekends, but now I can do it every day.
Right.
Or that be working hard, and now I'm gonna try maybe to work harder to give me some sense of control over this. So those ways at a certain point don't serve us, and that's when we must acquire new ways. And I always said the body is such a great place to start, because it's harder to change habits and ways of adapting from here. I mean, you can have all the mindset that you want, and you can garner all the will that you can garner. But if you don't learn in a way how to control the body and the mind, how to regulate yourself and start to build resiliency, those changes will be very difficult, even if we know that they're good for us. If your nervous system is used to habitually react in a certain way, in a certain pattern, and it served you for all your life, and on some level you also receive something from this, some benefit from it. But at a certain point now you realize it's not working for you. It's very hard to change that, because it's been hardwired inside of us. So the easiest place to start in a way is to start with the body, because it's something tangible. The symptoms that you're feeling, they're tangible symptoms. Your headaches, your shortness of breath, your heart palpitations, your ringing in the ears, your back pain, your stomach pain. Those are tangible places where you feel, in a way, this habitual pattern. Because there are always patterns in pain, there are always patterns in disease, and my pattern could be different than your pattern, because we're all unique, and the manifestation of that pattern will be different than yours. But changing pattern requires, in a way, the same process of identifying my pain, what's the patterns of my pain, and to start to work from the body in. And in a way, that's what I do. Instead of working from the mind in, which is complex, it's very hard to work through here. There's definitely benefit. People need sometimes to understand why do I have this chest pain that is not going away? Why I can't stop my panic attack? I feel like my heart is about to burst out and I need to go to emergency all the time. I feel like I'm dying. Why is this pain that has been bothering me for so many years, and I've had so many people look at it, why is it not going away? There must be something wrong with me. And that's what I hear often, almost every hour, when I see people. Why is this suffering not changing? Even though I had multiple people deal with it and it's not changing. And the reason it's not changing because, again, there's a habitual pattern that needs to change.
And I'm so glad you're presenting this, because I think we are kind of taught that anxiety exists in our mind. And so we think that's where we have to work. And people might say, I've told myself that everything's fine over and over. It's like I can't hear it. Why do I still feel this way? And we miss that link. But it seems counterintuitive to say, start with the body. But it makes sense, doesn't it, that we would have more efficacy starting there?
Absolutely. And we forget that we are one unit.
Yes.
This is one unit. This is not separated.
Yes.
Which is oneness, right? So to separate ourselves in fragments, this is the mind, take that aside. This is the heart, take that aside. This is the muscles in the flesh, take that aside. And that's why we got, in the medical model, we have a lot of specialists. We have the heart specialist, we have the endocrinologist, we have the lung specialist. We have a specialist for every part of us.
Mm-hmm.
So when we do have a problem, that specialist looks at that particular part, right? And that's what's, in a way, is missed in the process of chronic pain or chronic disease or traumas, is to look at everything. And to look at everything as a unit, in a way, one unit, right? And I've had some very strong people come to me and they say, listen, I'm very strong. Just yesterday, I had a conversation with someone. You know me, I'm very strong. I'm so strong, and I don't understand why I can't get over this. I never thought myself as a weak person. I'm so strong, but I can't get over this. I don't understand why.
Can I say something?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have not dealt with mental health issues in my life. Thank God. So, it's hard for people who don't have that issue to understand it. Because, we do say, well, everything's fine in your life. Get over it. Go do something, whatever, get out, go, you'll feel better. So, during this time, obviously I'm, working from home, but it's not the same, and I'm not seeing people. And I don't know, one day I was alone the whole day and I got very depressed, and nothing that I did or said to myself could relieve my anxiety and my depression. Nothing. And I finally thought to myself, wow, this is how some people live all the time. How horrible, because there's nothing you can do. I mean, I thought I can go out and go for a walk, or I can do some painting, but I didn't want to do any of that because I was too depressed. And, I finally did get out, went to my daughter's house and cried, but I can't imagine what it's like to live with that all the time. Yeah. So I just want to say that. I think because of this time, a lot of people are going to understand mental health issues a lot better. They're going to understand how some people live with it and have a lot of empathy for it.
That's such a great point, Linda, and I'm glad that you shared that with me, because you're right. Working with patients over the years, a lot of their pain is, how can people not understand what I'm going through? How can they not see it? How can my family, my doctor can't see my pain? There must be something wrong with me. I must be going crazy.
Yeah.
I must be going crazy, or there must be something wrong with me that they can't see my pain, my suffering, And I always said, inevitably pain comes to everyone at some point or another. I don't think there's one person that is exempt from going through a period in their life where they're not going to experience some kind of a chronic state or breakdown. And it might not happen for most of your life, but at some point it will come.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's part of the human experience also. Is the problem is just that we lack the tools, the know-how, and the resources, and the proper support. But when we don't have the tools, that's a horrible feeling, because we feel like we are sinking. It's like suddenly being in you can be surrounded by people but feel completely alone. You know, you can be I always use the metaphor, being suddenly in the middle of an ocean on a life raft, and there's a storm coming, and you're thinking, how am I going to hold on to this? You know, and oftentimes not having the tools makes us feel that way, especially the strong ones. Because when the strong ones feel like they're sinking, and all of a sudden the identity which is invested in being strong and self-sufficient is not helping, that's a horrible feeling. And again, you can be surrounded by a lot of love around you, people that care for you, love you, but all of a sudden something happens that would trigger you to depress, and it's a hard work to come up from. And there's more and more recognition now of it. I mean, even just 5 years ago, when I was working with trauma, 7 years ago, I opened a center specifically to work with trauma and chronic pain. And to see what has transpired over the last 7 years, the recognition of it, even just the word. Before, there was so much shame around the word trauma or mental illness. But now it's everywhere. It's even in the corporate world. I mean, it's amazing how much has changed and is changing. And this pandemic that we under would make it even more in the forefront. Yeah. And it needs to be in the forefront, because that's the real pandemic. And when I looked over the research and the numbers over the years, even in my own country, Canada, which my family came here because we believed that it was safe. And when I started to look at the actual numbers, I was shocked. Just to see how many people are suffering silently.
Well, I think you're right that none of us can escape it, right? I mean, such is life, that we're going to have these experiences. But you talked at the beginning about the collective effect of this. And I think she's right that more and more people are experiencing this for the first time. I know some people who struggle with chronic anxiety have said, the rest of the world is kind of learning how I feel day to day, right? So for some,
Very true.
these experiences are very new, and for some, they're just kind of another version of, something they struggle with pretty regularly. But I think there is an opportunity for understanding, and that's a silver lining. But I wanted to go back to the point that she made about when you're feeling so bad, you might intellectually know some things that would help, but it feels difficult to use them. So even if you look at the COVID-19 mental health feed, there are essentially, many different versions of the same suggestions, right? We have themes and topics that come up over and over again. Exercise and keep moving, meditate, try to practice mindfulness, eat well, reach out to people. But then we see that many individuals, are struggling and maybe haven't tried those. And this isn't to cast blame, right? But we might be inundated with these ideas, but sometimes it's difficult to start using them. So could you speak to that feeling of being so overwhelmed you don't even know how to get started, out of your own way, we might say?
Yeah, sometimes initially it's just allowing the feeling. So what do I mean by that? I mean, in a way, this collective experience of the pandemic is very similar to a loss,
Yes.
right? And I don't know if you experience losing someone that is close to you, but there's definitely stages to experiencing that loss, right? And oftentimes we try and prevent ourselves from going to the feeling aspect of feeling what authentically and naturally our mind and body wants to express in a way. So if we I did a video about allowing yourself to feel, and it's really creating the space inside that it's okay, whatever I'm feeling is okay. Let's not classify it also as something bad or unpleasant or unwanted. Let's just allow this feeling. And because I find from my clinical experience that when we try and manage the feelings or analyze the feelings or put a lid on the feelings, that causes more harm. And it has this cumulative effect with time also. It's like trying to, I use the word pressure. A feeling can feel like a pressure, and the pressure can be felt on the chest or in the abdomen or in the mind. And oftentimes we try and, again, put a lid on this pressure or try and change it, question it, analyze it. And sometimes it's just a matter of allowing yourself to fall into the feeling.
Yeah.
So if we feel sad, to allow ourselves to feel sad, or just being there instead of if somebody else is going through and you see that they're going through something difficult, not to try and change it, not to try and fix it or give recommendations of what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes when people start with me, they just start crying right away. And oftentimes they would say, I don't know why I'm crying. But all of a sudden just tears will come down. And just, it's a matter of me over the years learning how to be so present with someone. And this presence that you can give someone can enable someone who has difficulty with an emotion to allow that emotion to permeate through them. And that by itself can be so healing and bring you back to that place in your nervous system where you feel like you're coming back to yourself. Many of us have that feeling where we even say it out loud, I feel like I'm back.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like
Yeah.
I'm back to myself. I'm myself again.
Mm-hmm.
And when we say that, what really brings us back is, again, that our harmonious feeling in our nervous system, where we come back towards balance. And just like a heartbeat, the nervous system has a beat too, and a cycle, exactly just like a heartbeat. And actually, there's beats and pulses throughout the body. Every organ is a beat, every muscle is a beat, every nerve is a beat, and a pulsation. And it's just that there's a dysregulation that happens with it, with time, or with an event, or during a chronic state of stress. And when those waves start to regulate themselves again and come back to harmony, that's when we feel that we come back to ourselves.
Yeah. I've never quite heard it articulated that way, but I think I know exactly what you mean with that coming back to myself kind of feeling.
Yes, and that's what I often hear from the patients that I work with. Oh, I feel like I'm coming back to myself, Mikhail. I feel like I'm coming back. It's not me saying it. I've heard it so many times over the years from so many different people that I know that's the fact. And when we say we come back to ourselves, we come back towards regulation, towards balance, towards homeostasis, where we feel connected to ourselves and we feel connected to people around us and we feel connected to life. And that's really when we feel joy and happiness, Yeah, so it's just a matter of creating order from anarchy.
Right. And
But
this identifying piece seems so crucial, right? It seems sometimes like when we're experiencing negative emotions, we can get mired in that, and we start with the words you said, I'm such a strong person, I don't know why I'm feeling this way, right? When
that's
we've said this is part of the human condition. But we're socialized to reject certain emotional states, bodily states. Maybe we don't want to identify with them. I mean, maybe it's not healthy to, right? But it's interesting the ways in which we attach meaning to things and when we feel that desperate need to get out.
it's so vital. And one of the things that shocked me and created an aha moment for me in the past was when I saw the rates of post-traumatic stress disorders. And there was a study that was done amongst countries. I discovered that Canada was #1 in PTSD. And then the subsequent countries were all countries that on paper should be paradise, you know, safe countries like Holland and Britain and who else was there? You know, countries that you would never expect. But in particular Canada, like Canada, why Canada? And then when I started to look deeper into it, what they had in common was, first of all, they deemed as being safe. You know, this is a safe country, so don't worry, nothing bad will happen, and you can come from the unsafe countries to here and feel safe. But suddenly something happens to you that breaks that belief that it's safe. And it's something that will happen anywhere else also, right? You know, abuse or bullying or a procedure or an accident or a pandemic. But all of a sudden, what you add into that I find hurts many people is an insular society. As in other countries where trauma is more prevalent, when something traumatic happens to me, or if we go through a war together, or if we go through a pandemic together, right away there's community and connection around you. Even if you don't want it. As people come to your house, they bother you, they're always around you, and a way to bring you back, to offer you that support. As in Canada, per se, and I can speak for Canada, not the US, I'm sure it's very similar there. If something traumatic happens to you, you feel alone. And especially now in a pandemic where they tell you to be alone. So that makes it even worse. Something traumatic is happening to me and you tell me to be alone, to isolate myself, not to even hug my family or my friends that have supported me always. So that by itself creates, in a way, the dysregulation or the disease or the anxiety, the depression. Also, yeah, and that's what really amazed me is this, and I think this will change. Also, this will change, you know, how we feel about each other's well-being. You know.
Yes.
Because we are all going through it, not just you or that person. We are all going through it. Yeah.
Right. Many people have voiced that it's not just the present moment that feels destabilizing, it's trying to project toward the future and not knowing what that's going to look like.
But that's that has been, in a way, part of our narrative since the cave days.
Sure. Yes.
You know, maybe we should leave the cave. Maybe there's something better up ahead in the future, you know? No, we should stay here. We should stay here. It's safe. You know, I believe that it's been part of our narrative since the beginning of time and part of our evolution. Eventually, we have to go to the unknown.
Right.
And
Bummer,
that,
we have to be the generation to do so, huh?
what's that?
Joking. I said, bummer, we have to be the generation to do so, huh?
Every,
But of course,
every
it's not just,
generation does a little bit of that, you know.
there's something. Yeah. Yes.
You know, and each generation is a different, in a way, a different valley to cross than the previous ones. I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
my parents look at us, and our parents look at us and they say, "You think it's difficult for you? Look at what I've been through." But
Yes.
what I feel sorry for what you're going through right now, because we didn't have to worry about all of this back then. You know, so there's always a new valley that we are walking towards, the unknown, and that's where a lot of resistance can occur. You know, because
Right.
we have so many fears around the unknown, right? And that's where the friction, or this kind of resistance and conflict that can happen inside of us, consciously and subconsciously. But sometimes change is inevitable, even with your utmost resistance. And in a way, this pandemic is forcing us to change. And sometimes it's not comfortable when it's forced on us. Yeah, nobody likes change. It's uncomfortable,
Right.
because that means that you have to leave something behind. You know? Yeah. But with
And
the
I
right,
suppose
yeah, go ahead.
I just was going to say, if we look back in history, we have anecdotes and almost roadmaps for this, right? But the people who share their story in a way that feels useful, they almost never say, "Oh, I was strong and unshaken throughout it all. Everything was fine, and I never had a down day or a struggle." I mean, as humans, we tend to resonate with stories of struggle and the uphill battle. So again, just going back to the idea of, feeling like you're not strong because you're experiencing those emotions, not really reality based.
That's right. And oftentimes, again, working with patients who live in a state of anxiety, isolation, panic, and fear, or any chronic state, which really has all those symptoms. Those are just symptoms. The belief is I'm alone in this. It's just me that is going through it.
Right.
The situation is unique to me. I'm different from others. And I've had some people that I will tell you, months later they'll come back to me, because what I like to say to all the people that come to me, most of the people that are around you right now are going through either something very similar to you or even worse. So think about all the people that are around you that are going through something very similar to you. Maybe it doesn't look the same, or something even worse. And most people won't believe me. But months later, they will come back and say, you were absolutely right. That person has just confided in me that her and her husband are breaking up. Or that person is, we are all going through something. And it's not just me saying it. All you have to do, again, is just look at the numbers of the stats. And the stats always are some of the people that volunteer to raise their hand and saying, yes, I'm going through this. But a lot of people don't raise their hand. And a lot of people also are not aware that they're going through something. But what the stats always say, that most of the people around you are going through something. They've experienced some kind of a suffering or a trauma.
Yeah.
And if they know,
I think that's where social media is useful, because
yes,
there's a degree of a little bit more anonymity, a little bit of distance that's sometimes helpful for people. So you might join a group like this one and just kind of scroll and observe, right? Or feel more comfortable sharing your story. And I think hopefully hearing from, even a small group like this, that other people are experiencing similar things, right? The power of Me Too, hopefully that helps to break down the loneliness, the shame, the guilt, the negativity.
It does. That's what groups like this do. There's such a relief knowing that hundreds of people like me are going through a similar experience.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in your case, there's over 2,000 people in this group.
Right.
And that's a very quick sample, right? That all of us are going through similar experiences and similar feelings, and there's such a relief in just being part of a group like that. When I've done work with groups, there's always so much healing that happens when people start to share what they're going through, what they've been through, or how they also are changing because of it, or how they've changed. I've seen so much healing happens where people come to me after. I was so happy to hear that woman there share what she's been through. I felt like it was only me. I felt like she was talking to me. I felt that was my story. And and you see all of a sudden connection between those people also. And again, we are a creature that needs to feel connected. And when we are isolated or quarantined, we hurt, we suffer.
Yeah. So, of course, we had a little bit of a problem with the live feed today, so more people might be watching this later. So if they are, and this is really resonating with them, and they are someone who's struggling with anxiety or panic attacks, even insomnia, physical symptoms of anxiety, increased chronic pain, and we've seen all these complaints. Do you have a couple of concrete tools you can offer them that they might try?
Absolutely. I'm all about concrete tools.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I pride myself is to, when somebody comes to me, I always tell them, I'm not going to fix you.
Right.
I'm not going to heal you or fix you. I'm going to teach you how to heal yourself. Yes. So the way that I know how to do it is to give you the tools that are necessary to go through what you're going through right now and in the future. So when you have the tools and you see that they work and you implement them and apply them, you start to feel confident with time. If I apply this tool, that helps me. And if I have by the end of my process a toolkit where I can use all these tools, I feel pretty confident to go through whatever I need to go through.
Right. And would you agree practice is important with those tools? Like even at times when you're, practicing before you're sort of so deep in anxiety that it feels like you can't even pull that tool out of the hat.
That's right. Some tools are like emergency tools, meaning I'm in an emergency state right now, and this tool will pull me out of the emergency. And some tools are to exercise, in a way, resilience. So they require consistent practice. Okay. So it's like a muscle. Your nervous system is a muscle. If you don't exercise it, it won't get strong. And when it's aroused, your nervous system, it falls into that habitual arousal cycle that you're in and puts you in a state of either wanting to run away from it or becoming hypervigilant and going into war with it, or being so exhausted and overwhelmed and collapsing into it. And when you start to exercise that nervous system of yours, the arousal cycle and the state that it puts you in, you can control that. Meaning, it doesn't mean that you won't be triggered, but the amount of time that you spend going into it and falling into a state will disappear with time and will lessen. And that gives you confidence.
Yes.
That here's the next thing, and now I'm applying these tools, and I can bring myself quickly into balance. And that's so important. And nobody teaches us in a way how to deal with the inevitable pain or suffering, and that's so important. So yes, I'll share a couple of quick tools.
Great.
And the first tool, I call it cooling the circuits. So the circuits are here. This is in a way your hard drive, and we spend so much time in here, and again, there's so much stimulation that is coming through, and there's so much analysis that happens here. And this is the fastest computer in the world. And in a way, it can be overheated. Just like circuits, computer circuits can be overheated. So this particular method, I call it cooling the circuits, but what it does, it brings a lot of the blood flow from the back of the head back to the front. If you're in a state of fear or chronic anxiety, your amygdala, which some call it your primitive brain or your reptilian brain, is the source of a lot of your anxiety and fear state. And you start to operate from there, and actually that creates a lot of your symptomology, from shortness of breath to heart palpitation, headaches, pain, inflammation, is when your amygdala is overactive. So this method brings a lot of the blood flow from the amygdala back to the frontal cortex, or the neocortex part of your brain. And it's the part of the brain where we can see things clearer, and we can start to make better decisions. And in a way, it's almost like the architect of you, where you can see the overview of everything. So this particular method, if you would like to join me, is quite simple. It's an inhalation with the nose, deep, and goes through the nose, and an exhalation as if you're blowing through a straw. So we're gonna do that repeatedly. And in a way, what I want you to experience or feel is the level of pressure from the head, just like a pressure cooker, starts to come off. And you feel like you are more in the body. So we're gonna do that for a few minutes. Would you wanna do that with me?
Absolutely.
So just watch me for a second, and then we'll go through it together.
Okay.
So it looks like this. So an inhalation with the mouth, with the nose, and an exhalation through the mouth. Purse your lips as if you're blowing through a straw. All the way out, and again through the nose. So come join me. In through the mouth, through the nose. And again. Fully exhale, and in through the nose again. You're really elongating that exhalation, and in right to the back of the head. And again. And if you continue to do that for a few more rounds, you will feel a lightness that comes in the head. Yeah, and we usually do that anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. The more anxious you feel, and the longer it will take you maybe, but you will see in about 5 minutes, you're gonna feel very relaxed. And again, the sensation of pressure in the head starts to come down. That's why I call it cooling the circuits.
Mm-hmm.
And again, scientifically, it's been proven to move blood from the amygdala to the front of the head. And it's almost like if somebody had a hold of your neck and your nerves, suddenly that hold and pressure relaxes. And that's the beauty and the simplicity. So that's one tool. This next tool is, I call it hacking your anxiety. So there's a breastbone here. It's a flat bone that connects your ribs together. We all have it. If you don't have it, go to emergency. But you should feel a very flat bone here. And in a way, this is a cage that protects what symbolizes life in the body. What symbolizes life in the body is the lungs and your heart. So without the lungs being able to breathe properly, you can't oxygenate the mind and the body properly. Therefore, you'll be anxious and in pain. So when there's not enough oxygen coming in to the body, inflammation rises up. There's too much acid that builds up in the blood, and that creates more inflammation in the body. And that's all because of not being able to breathe properly. And if you're not able to breathe properly because of the tension in here, there's a sac that surrounds your heart, like so. It's called the pericardium. And when the body or your nervous system feels threatened or duress, that sac, the pericardium tightens around the heart, like so. So then people feel a lot of tension in the chest, like they can't breathe, anxiety rises, and that puts a person into a panic state. Panic is really a state of overwhelm. Anxiety is a state of management. I'm managing in this state, you know. But panic is when we can't manage anymore and we feel overwhelmed. So this, in a way, this technique is, again, quite simple. And I've shown it to hundreds of people over the years. And it has stopped panic attacks. So what I want you to do is locate the breastbone here, the flatness on the bone, and just in line with your chest, in this area from here to here, there will be a tender spot. If you've been experiencing anxiety, there will be a tender spot. So locate that spot. You found it? Yes? Linda, found it?
Yeah.
Okay. So once you, and how did I know that spot was there? Because, again, thousands of people over the years, there's always a spot that is very specific, it's very focused. And if you touch it even slightly, it hurts. But if you touch it deeply, it hurts quite a bit. It's very uncomfortable, correct? Okay, so what I want you to do is to gather those 3 fingers together and to tap that spot very gently. And I want you to continuously tap it, and then come up the bone and tap that area again. And your body, when you do so, will eventually want to react in 1 of 3 ways. One is a yawn, one is a sigh, and the third could be a smile. So you wait until your body voluntarily will create one of those 3 reactions. And again, up and down, and you come back to the spot. So sometimes you have to go up and come back to the spot. And again, until your body creates one of those 3 reactions. You go back to your sore spot. Yeah, I could see you wanting to sigh there, Stacey, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I just did.
Yeah. So when that happens, sigh, yawn, or suddenly your mouth automatically goes like this for no reason, that's a signal that that sac that surrounds the heart relaxed. Just relax like so. Once you get that reaction, then you breathe to your solar plexus area. It's almost like once that tension is relaxed, you're trying to create more space now with your breath. Okay, so you do that a few times. And many people, when that happens to them, oh, I feel like I got more space in my chest. I feel like I can breathe a little deeper.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. Number 2, there's a reflex point here, just underneath the wrist, the crest of the wrist, in between the 2 muscles, right in the middle. You'll feel a little tunnel there that you can trace. So about 2 finger width. From there, right in the center, there's a point that you can stimulate with your finger. And you just hold with your thumb. And again, the nerve stems right to the heart. So if you just hold it there, and you don't have to press hard, you just hold it. If you pay enough attention underneath your thumb pad, you will feel a pulsation that is stemming from the body. It's like a heart pulse. Try and feel that. It's there because you're alive. If you weren't alive, you wouldn't be feeling it. So just pay attention with your finger. And you'll feel as if something is bouncing from the inside towards your thumb. And that's a pulsation. It's a pulse there. And what I want you to do is just concentrate on that. And as you are concentrating, just again to continue to breathe to the diaphragm there. Now that you relax your chest, what you're trying to do here, the intention here is to tell to your heart, okay, heart, you can relax. I'm alive, you can relax. Because when people go through panic, they think that they're dying, you know?
Okay.
That's what it feels like. It's so long. So you're feeling the pulse, that's life. You just create more space in your chest around the heart, and now you're soothing in a way. Through the nerve, you're soothing the heart. And this takes usually between 2 to 5 minutes. That's it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's a quick way to what I call hack your arousal and your anxiety and even bring people back from a panic state.
Thank you so much. I
Yeah.
think those will be really handy.
And those are just a couple tools that I can use right away, but there's so many other tools.
Awesome.
And one tool works for another and not the other. But when you have a few tools collectively, you can choose what works for you in that moment.
Yes.
Yeah, and then your body will give you the feedback. That's the beauty.
Right.
The body right away, like I said, sigh, smile, or yawn.
Mm-hmm.
So yawning, why yawning? People think, oh, I'm yawning because I'm tired. Not always true. Most of the time we yawn because that's a response to relieve stress. You know,
Yeah.
we smile because that's a response to relieve stress.
Mm-hmm. So I know we're nearly out of time. I did have a question that came in from one of the group members before we go. Just kind of curious about your work with shiatsu. This idea that the body remembers the discord, the trauma, perhaps even after we maybe think that we've healed it. And might massage kind of make way for a better physical understanding of the impact of trauma. And perhaps the question would be, has your experience with that body work kind of further informed these ideas?
That's why I chose particularly shiatsu when I was 26 years old, and I understood the mind-body connection experientially and for my own personal healing journey. Then I said, well, what kind of therapy with that understanding will fit? And I looked at all the modalities, and shiatsu therapy was the only one that had that understanding. In a way, acupuncture, a lot of the what we call oriental type of modalities for centuries have had that understanding that emotions can cause pain, our traumas can cause disease. So that's been in their history for 5, 6, 7,000 years. And shiatsu again, what was that vehicle for me to express that with patients. And when patients come in, we have that holistic viewpoint. Okay, what's going on with the structure? What's going on with the different systems in the body? The nervous system, the muscles, the joints. What's going on with the organs themselves? How do the organs feel? So we do a lot of the skill set that we receive and develop over time is our palpation skills. So learning how to palpate all the different systems, even how the blood vessels feel, what nerves have been weakened, what nerves have been overworked, what organs are feeling the stress. And then taking into account the story of the person, how these events have affected them, what is the process. And over the years also having that personal interest in trauma and acquiring more skills, really putting the pieces together where a person, when they come to me, I really give them an overview. Because usually what ends up happening, they go to all these specialists and all these therapists, but everybody gives them just a little block.
Right.
And
very siloed.
because of my development and my continuing education, and the fact that I was a creator of an integrative clinic, and I worked with all this, I put all the modalities together, and I said, now let's work as a team with the complexity of disease or trauma. So I had that experience of in a way, putting the pieces together. So when the person comes to me, I put the picture for them together. I said, this is the causation. This is how it's affecting you. These are the systems that it's affecting. And let's start here where it's manageable.
Right.
Let's start where you can elicit change. You can elicit change in the body always first. And so that's why I always start with the body before anything else. But always making that connection.
Coming back to that.
Yeah. Yeah. You
Such a
see your anxiety, if we release this area, notice how your anxiety disappears. Does it
Yes.
disappear? Yes. Now, can you make that connection to this area? Very much so. So they start to see the connection between mind and body. They start to see, to feel, and eventually.
So the mind kind of follows the body.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the body follows the mind. But I always said the body is very honest and very loyal. The mind not so honest and not so loyal.
Ah, right. Yes.
So I teach then how to trust the body, because if it's honest and loyal, and it will always tell you what's good, what's not good, what's right, what's not right for me. This food is good, this food is not good. This exercise is good, this exercise is not. This person makes me feel good, this person makes me feel bad. This environment makes me feel good. So the body is always giving us feedback.
Yeah.
And it's very direct. It's good, bad, yes, no. Yeah. Yeah, it's the mind that takes us to those gray areas or blind spots or conditioning. It's pre-scripted here. Here it's organic. It's right away. Yeah. So that's what I love to do, is to have people realize those connections themselves and go, oh, wow, how is that possible that we stimulated the body here and suddenly all of this changed? Wow, I didn't know that could happen. And memories release. People start to have realizations that they couldn't have before. Things that they've forgotten suddenly come forth. So the body is like a memory stick. Yeah, it's a storage facility and a memory stick. Yeah.
But you've given us some hacks today.
Yes.
Your term. I like that. So I appreciate that you were willing to give back to us and share with us. This is really fascinating.
Yeah,
and I know you have some other things posted, and so people will kind of know where to find your stuff, and we can continue the conversation in the comments as well.
Beautiful. I'm just starting an online program that I created for people with anxiety and panic attacks. Okay. So I can post that in the comments, and if people have any other questions, they can direct message me. I'm more than willing to answer those questions.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah. And thank you, Stacey, very much for doing this.
Yes.
It's beautiful what you've done and created this group for people. It's helping many people every day.
Thank you. Yeah. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Linda.
Bye-bye.